Welcome back to the Fresh Ink Studios. I'm here with Adam and Zach again. My name is Kyle. I'll be guest hosting for a little while. Hopefully I don't screw it up and they let me come back on a couple more times. Today we're going to be covering a couple topics related to baseball. Actually, just recently they released the top 20 jersey sellers for this past season. Some surprising names, not surprising names. A couple superstars on here, of course. So one thing I wanted to point out right away is this youth movement that's going on in baseball.
Total youth movement.
Absolutely.
I mean, right here it says, make sure I get this right. I have to read it word for word. Makes for a great video. It's the first time since MLB player jersey rankings have been released that the 9 most popular players are all under the age of 30. So, I mean, you're talking about a lot of young studs coming up through the ranks. I mean, I felt that's pretty shocking considering everyone thinks this baseball is an old man's game nowadays.
Yeah. And I think you can even look at the top 20 and of the ones 10 through 20. I mean, I can only point out 2 guys that are over the age of 30, so you could even take that stat a little bit further, and 17, 18 of them are probably guys that are under 30. Are guys that are under 30, really.
Yeah, so, I mean, we'll go through the list real quick just to get the 20 names out of the way and then talk a little bit about maybe who's shocking, who's not for you. Starting off at 20, we got George Springer, outfielder for the Houston Astros. 19, got Jake DeGrom, Cy Young winner for the Mets. Paul Goldschmidt, his first year as a St. Louis Cardinal, he's gone up on there. Got Francisco Lindor, perennial all-star for the Indians. Chris Bryant, of course, perennial all-star for the Cubs. Freddie Freeman, one of the most underrated guys, I think. He kind of flies under the radar a lot for first baseman. Pete Alonso, a little shocking to see him on here considering he's a rookie.
Right, came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing amazing this year. Alex Bregman, probably going to be MVP, maybe.
Close to it, yep.
Yeah.
Another Houston Astro. Clayton Kershaw, old Father Time himself, continues to defy the odds. Speaking of old Father Time, we got Yadier Molina.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yadier Molina. Yep, number 11. And then starting off the top 10, we got Anthony Rizzo, everyone's favorite Cub. Mike Trout, the best, most underrated player
Ever.
Yes, ever.
I mean, I think we were talking earlier. It's like people don't really realize how good Mike Trout is until they look at the numbers, and it's like, oh, that's Mike Trout. But it's like, no, he's really good.
Top 3 in MVP voting every year since, I think, his second year on, which has got to be like last 7, 8 years.
His consistency is, unmatched in baseball, at least for right now.
Any sport.
Like it's unreal. Any other sport, you'd be seeing him on every single magazine, every single commercial, all of that.
Then moving on, we got Jose Altuve, another Astro. I guess they're a pretty popular team. Got Mookie Betts, Boston Red Sox. Not sure for how much longer, but he's still there. Got Ronald Acuna Jr. from the Braves. Christian Yelich, last year's MVP, right?
Yes.
For the Brewers. Got Javi Baez, another Chicago Cub. Cody Bellinger, probably this year's NL MVP for the Dodgers. Bryce Harper, his first year at Phillies.
Makes sense.
No surprise there. And then, of course, number 1 for the 3rd year in a row, Mr. Aaron Judge himself.
3rd year in a row? I didn't realize that.
No way. I knew last year, but I didn't realize this was
3 years in a row.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
He barely played this year too.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had some injuries. Still put up great numbers for himself. Are there any names that you guys saw on here that you're like, wow, I'm really surprised they're on here?
I guess just circling back to Mike Trout. Being down at 9 because of how big of an all-star he is. I understand he has been at LA for his entire career, so maybe you don't have that fan base buying up new stuff, but you see the top athlete of any other sport, their jersey sales are always number 1 every single year. You look at Tom Brady and it's always up there because of his stature. So I guess it just surprises me to see him down all the way at 9. I would expect to see him up in like the top 3.
Yeah, he definitely should be. He gets held back a little bit by the LA. Even though LA is a huge market, it's not a huge sports market, especially a baseball market.
Right.
They compete with the Dodgers, so there's not a lot for him to grab onto. And then again, being on the West Coast, you're playing games that are a lot earlier, or would be later for guys on the East Coast or guys in the Midwest. So not a lot of people get to see him on TV.
Well, and I also saw. Sorry, he had 45 home runs this year.
Oh yeah,
that was the most in his career.
I think you could argue he can be the MVP. If his team was a playoff team, I think no doubt he's the MVP. But I think Bregman edges him out a little bit because of his team. Their numbers are fairly similar, but Trout is definitely beating him in a couple categories. But yeah, he should be. He could be. He's very well up there.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like how we mentioned off camera how he plays for the Angels, which is kind of like the Clippers of the NBA, where they're the other LA team because the Dodgers are the Dodgers.
Right.
Any surprises for you, Adam?
Yeah, there's a couple. Bryce Harper being number 2, I totally get why he's number 2 because he's with a new team. So anyone in the Philadelphia market is going to want to go get a Harper jersey. Didn't have the best year. Yadier Molina for me at 11 too is strange because he didn't play a ton. Although he's probably one of the best catchers of all time. St. Louis isn't a huge market, but it's a good football or a good baseball fan base, loyal fan base. I just wouldn't have guessed he would be over guys like Chris Bryant, Freddie Freeman, So I think Yadier Molina is my biggest one at 11.
Yeah, I think the fact that St. Louis is a baseball town is one of top 10 sports cliches.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Every time you watch a Cardinals podcast, they're like, "Oh, this is a great baseball town." It's like, dude, we get it.
It's a good team. It's kind of like they're kind of like the Patriots to the MLB. They're always up there. They're always good, even in their bad years. They're still making the playoffs. So.
Yep. Right. All right. So now that we've got a couple of those surprisers out of the way, let's move on to a couple of players we want to highlight and talk about, why they're on here, if we think they're going to do well from now on or they'll be here next year. So, Zach, I'll go to you first, pitch it over to you. Who's a couple of players that you want to highlight from this list?
Yeah, I mean, just starting right off the bat at number 2. I mean, Bryce Harper. Again, he's from first year on Philly, so totally makes sense that he's at 2. I think we'll see him there next year too, in the top 3.
You think so? After this year,
I
mean, he had a
so.
down year, not $30 million year.
It wasn't terrible though. I mean, he still had a ton of at bats compared to what he's done before. So he had more hits. Was still up there with 35 home runs. So I mean, a lot of people were calling him out for having a down year, but to me, I don't see it being a horrifically down year. And it's Bryce Harper. I mean, being in the Philly fan base, I think that's the thing that's going to keep those jersey sales up, being in the second year of it. And then another guy, I mean, no surprise to me is Clayton Kershaw. I mean, he's just been dominant for how long now? And with being with the LA Dodgers, I mean, it 100% makes sense to me that he's in the top 20 and actually closer to the top 10.
I think a guy that we're going to see a big rise in, similar to what Cody Bellinger did this year as far as numbers go, is Pete Alonso there at 14. I think we're going to see him up towards the polar bear, up towards the top 6 or 7. I mean, there's a couple names up there who aren't going to move. Judge, Bellinger, probably Baez. But I think he's going to be a top 6, top 7 jersey guy next year with the New York market, all the home runs he hit, breaking rookie records. I think he's it's surprising that he's already in the top 20. I'm not surprised that he is, but I think he's going to climb those ranks. Another guy, too, kind of going back to touch on the Bryce Harper situation, I think goes to show you how markets totally play a role with the Manny Machado, too. He wasn't in a huge market before in Baltimore. Obviously, he spent half a year with L.A., but he was a $300 million guy, too. Going to San Diego, he's nowhere to be found. Kind of a down year for him, so statistically it makes sense, but it goes to show you how much that Philadelphia market propelled Bryce Harper up there with how big their fan base is and how non-existent the Padres is. So,
yeah, I mean, I think Manny's going to do all right living in San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, $300 million
a year, all right.
No big deal. It's just, I would have thought a guy, anytime you have a $300 million guy in any sport, you think you'd be in the top 20 somewhere.
Sure. 2 players I'll go over. The first one's Ronald Acuna Jr. As somebody who plays fantasy baseball, that guy is a stud.
5-tool.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I think, going by the ESPN player rater, he would have been number 1 if he didn't miss the last week of the season.
True.
I mean, he almost put up a 40-40 season. You don't see that nowadays. I mean, 40 home runs, 40 steals on top of that.
What, 21, not even 21?
Yeah, he's only 21, yeah. Unreal season. I think he's going to be the next Mike Trout, but he'll get more press because he's going to be with the Braves.
Sure.
Right.
And the other one's Aaron Judge. I mean, that guy plays in the same division as the Rays, my favorite team.
Yes.
But I can't help but root for Aaron Judge. How do you not root for a dude who's 6'7", 280, and just hits bombs every time he goes up there? Dude, he's so huge. I love watching. I can just watch Aaron Judge play the field. I don't even have to watch him bat. Just play the field. And of course, playing for the Yankees, he's always going to be up there. And then also the jersey number itself, number 99.
Yeah,
it's such a unique
football
number. That you usually see on the spring training single A guys, where it's like, you're not going to make the team. Here's your jersey. You're number 99. Right. It's like, crap.
Right.
But he's, to his credit, man, that's him, number 99 every time.
Yep.
All rise.
He's going to have that number forever in everybody's mind, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just bring a little bit of a real baseball into it. Seeing his Fangraphs spray chart for his home runs. If you look at it, everything's the opposite field, which is so weird because you would think somebody that big, right-handed, he's got to be pulling everything.
Right.
But he hits it to the opposite field, and if you look at Yankee Stadium, the dimensions is so short out in right field. I mean, left-handers have a field day out there. I think it's only like, check my notes here. We're looking at 314 feet in right field.
Oh my God.
314 to hit a major league home run.
I mean, I think that's total credit to Aaron Judge. It shows that he's a true hitter through and through. He knows what his advantage is. He knows where he can benefit the most, to where he's not some, Adam Dunn who's hitting, or Kyle Schwarber, 230 a year with 45 homers. He hits for average, and he still hits for power because he knows where to hit the ball and how to take advantage of Yankee Stadium.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I do have a couple concerns. Speaking of the size, he is 6'7", 280. Like, he's had some injury concerns the past couple years. Hasn't played. I think last year he came close to 150 or just barely over it, but this year definitely didn't hit it. 6'7", 280, playing baseball, playing the field every day. I mean, yeah, he can play the DH, but I mean, playing the field, that's a lot of weight to move around.
Sure,
absolutely.
At least he doesn't have too much to move. Again, going back to the short porch in right field, it's probably playing not quite Fenway, but yeah, he doesn't have to go too far.
Right. And then on another positive note, we kind of want to talk about some players who may be on the rise. Maybe they're going to move up through the ranks next season. Maybe some players not on the top 20 that we might see there next year. So, Zach, you have anyone in mind for that?
Yeah, I gotta give a shout out to my boy Nick Castellanos. I mean, we already see 3 Cubs in these top 20, but I definitely see him re-signing with the Cubs next year. Being a Tigers fan, it was kind of sad to see him leave, but I'm happy to see him playing for a team that is actually playing meaningful ball games and not the last team in the MLB. But no, I mean, his stats got even better when he left Detroit, and I think a lot of that has to do with Comerica and their dimensions. And now I think he's going to be back at Wrigley, being in that Chicago market, and I think they're going to be competing again next year. I mean, they fired their manager and everything, but they said they weren't really going to blow things up. They were going to keep that team intact for the most part, and I think he'll be a big part of that. And I could easily see him being in the top 20, especially being a new player on a new team. He'd be who I'd bet on to crack that top 20.
He tore it up when he came to the Cubs.
Yeah, I think if he stays with the Cubs, there actually might be a shot he can get in the top 20. It totally depends on where he's going to go. From what I've heard, it kind of sounds like there's mutual interest, but again, I mean, Cubs have a lot of contracts on the books, so we'll see.
Got to make dollars and cents.
It does. I mean, as a Cubs fan, I'd love to see him back, but it'd be tough to have an outfield of Castellanos and Schwarber every day defensively. I mean, I'd love him offensively, but that's a lot of asking of Jason Hayward in center to cover basically all 3 spots in the outfield.
Just get some extra cardio in, Jason.
Yeah.
What about for you, Adam? Any players that you think either are going to rise up or crop on the list?
Immediately, I was looking at this list, and I was kind of looking over the names, and I was looking for him, thinking he was in here. Juan Soto from the Nationals. He kind of took over for Bryce Harper when he left. He's kind of the face of the Nationals. We saw what would have been last night during the wild card game, where he basically cleared the bases on that pseudo single that turned into a double because the guy missed it in right field. But I think he's going to have a good postseason. I think he's already a superstar. He's only 20 years old. He's not even 21. And he's the best player on one of the bigger markets and one of the better teams going forward. Juan Soto's my pick.
Yeah, I think you kind of saw that with the Nationals when they let Bryce walk. Everyone's like, oh, where do the Nationals go from here? And they're like, hey, we got some good players. We got Rendon, we got Juan Soto, we got Victor Robles. So, I mean, Trey Turner. They got a lot of good players there that's, hey, we'll be all right if Bryce walks.
My other guy with a little asterisk here is Josh Bell. I don't think he'll be in the top 20. I think he deserves to be in the top 20, kid from the Pittsburgh Pirates, because he's as talented. And he was on pace to having an MVP season the first half of the year. Pirates didn't really follow through with their winning, but and he got hurt towards the end. But he's someone who should be in the top 20 talent-wise, but I think being in the Pittsburgh market, he'll be outside there.
Yeah, it's not every day you see a switch-hitting hitter who can bat 30 home runs.
Oh, dude, and he can crush it at PNC with that short porch and right. So,
yeah, just taking a look at the list for myself, I think one name that's definitely going to be on there is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I mean, he was the consensus number one overall prospect in baseball before he got called up. He's got the family legacy, Vlad Sr., everyone's favorite player who literally golfed home runs out every time he went up there. You saw him on the national stage with Pete Alonso in that home run derby where he actually hit more home runs total than Pete Alonso did, the guy who won it. So you got the national exposure there. There's, a little bit of worry since he's in Toronto, a market not a lot of people really tune into. They usually aren't very competitive. They play in the AL East, so you're going to be competing with the Red Sox, with the Yankees, with the Rays. So that might hurt him a little bit. But overall, I think the Blue Jays roster has a lot of good young players, for a lineup to build around. They got Teoscar Hernandez, Kevin Biggio, Rowdy Tellez, Dave Jansen, the catcher, is one of the bright young catchers. So it's not going to be just Vlad Jr. in there every time, but he's going to hit a lot of home runs. He's going to play with a lot of young rosters. So I think he's definitely a name to keep on the radar. He's definitely going to be in there in the top 20.
And we've seen it in the past, too, when the Blue Jays are good, guys like Josh Donaldson and Jose Bautista, they were in these numbers because they have the whole Canadian market. So once they really have a superstar there, and it looks like they have a couple young guys like you mentioned, those guys will start to be in the top 20 because everyone in Canada is rooting for them.
New Roy Halladay, another name that was pretty popular.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Zach, moving on, we're going to go from positive to the negative. We're going to talk about some guys who might fall off the list, might drop in the rankings. Who's your guy that you think might slip a little?
Father Time, Molina. I mean, he logged 113 games this year, which is, I want to say it's the least amount of games he's played in his career, or if not the second least. And just being at 37, I think there are a lot of people that are going to be cracking the top 20 next year that we don't see in the current list. I don't think this is going to stay the same. So I think a lot of that shakeup, we're going to see him kind of drop out of that mix there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of wear and tear on your knees as a catcher to be 37, even, as little, the lowest amount he's played in, but still, that's a lot of innings.
Yeah.
That's not just standard 9 innings. There's extra innings. There's all the other stuff that goes along with playing baseball. It's kind of why you see, another player like Buster Posey, who's moved to first base a little bit. Joe Mauer did that towards the end of his career. See guys move around, whereas Yadi's been the catcher. That's all he does.
He's just chilled.
Somehow.
I'm going to go kind of like a total spin zone here. I think Chris Bryant falls out of the top 20.
Really?
I think he might. I don't know if he'll necessarily be a Cub starting next year, and it totally depends on where he goes. Again, Bryce Harper effect. If he goes to a large market, I think he'll stay there, but there's a good chance that he might go to a smaller market, and then I think he falls out of the top 20 because I think he's always been up there the last couple of years in the top 10, and to see him at 16, just as a Cubs fan and Cubs fans in general, Baez at number 4 has that national appeal. A lot of people like Baez. He's a superstar. Rizzo is the face of the Cubs. He always has been. I think he always will be. And Bryant's kind of that guy who produced really well at a young age, but over the years he's kind of leveled off. He's still very good, but he set the bar so high for himself early that it's kind of like he's coming back down to earth a little bit. If he stays with the Cubs, I think he hovers around 16 and 20, but there's so many young guys that we talked about earlier that I think could come in and overtake him. Again, if he gets traded, I think he might fall out of the top 20.
I got to say, from what I've seen from Cubs fans, you guys need to cool it with the trade rumors.
These
trades that people are proposing.
Someone's going. And I think it's Chris Bryant. I think you get a lot back for him. He's not a huge voice. He's not very vocal off the field. He's pretty quiet on the field, too. He produces. He's good. He'll help anybody, but nothing that has that excitement and fun like Baez and Acuna, some of those guys at the top have.
For sure. My guy that I think is going to be falling down is going to be Jose Altuve. Mm-hmm. He's been around for a while. He had a couple injuries this season, and it's not so much – I mean, he still had a really great year, especially by his standards. It's not so much that I think his play and his – level of talent is going to decline. I think the Astros are going to have so many good players.
Yeah.
You look through, they got, Yordan Alvarez, who came up, midway through the season, who's probably going to win the AL Rookie of the Year. Yeah. He didn't even play the full season.
Right.
That dude, he's off the charts. He's batting like 300, 30 home runs. Just, so weird to see in the game of baseball where everyone strikes out to see a home run hitter bat 300 like that. You got him, you got Kyle Tucker, you got Alex Bregman, who's probably going to win the AL MVP. So I think it's just more so talent around him. It's just there's so much.
Carlos Correa's not even on this list. I mean, he's been hurt all year too, but again, he was probably in the top 20 or pretty close to it this year and probably last year as well.
Justin Verlander, he's not on here. He's going to win the Cy Young.
I mean,
if Garrett Cole stays, they're talking about if they're going to keep him or not. But dude had 300 strikeouts.
And Altuve was the guy, too, before they were truly good. They were teetering on okay for a while, and he was really the guy there. And now that they, like you said, Springer, Correa, all those young guys, Bregman, they've kind of overtaken Altuve.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it's more so just the talent around him is going to surpass him a little bit.
Totally.
We didn't really cover this topic in our production notes, but, we always like to tie it back to sports memorabilia, of course, with all the topics we cover. So out of these guys in the top 20, who is someone that you could see that you want to get their autograph now because it's going to go up in value within the next, 3 to 5 years?
Of the guys in the top 20?
Yeah, you got to pick top 20. That's the rules, kid.
I'm going to beat you guys to it because I think it's an easy, obvious answer. It's Pete Alonso. I mean, he's
Cop out.
He's a rookie. I think he's the only rookie on the list, and obviously for good reason because he hit 50-some home runs or pretty close to it, breaking rookie records. I think you jump on Pete Alonso as soon as you can if you haven't already, and that jersey, that signature value, that'll be up there in the top 5 within the next year or so.
Yeah, the hype train for him is
huge. New York market.
Control.
I mean, we talk about markets all the time, and he's in New York. So I mean, look at Aaron Judge.
Yep. What about for you, Zach?
I mean, with the offseason going on right now, or not offseason, postseason, I really think that the Yankees are going to keep making a push, and I think Judge is just going to keep solidifying himself as a dominant force.
He's pretty pricey already.
I know that's what I mean. Is I think it's just going to keep going. I mean, I think after this postseason, we're going to see it's going to be undisputed that he is at the top of his game, and it could be there for a while.
Who's going to be more, Aaron Judge or Mariano Rivera? If you're going to a signing, who do you think is going to be more?
Are we talking about 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, within the next couple of years.
I'm going to still stay with Rivera.
Yeah.
But that's only because he's not playing anymore. But I could easily see Aaron Judge. I mean, with the way we're seeing sports go right now and how their management is, I could easily see his manager pushing him and saying, we're going to put him over the top. Like he's going to have a more lasting image and everything.
Yeah, if he keeps up his production like he has the last couple of years, I mean, he's going to go down as one of the greatest of all time. So it's hard to say, but Rivera is the best ever at that position. So you can't really argue it
with
currently.
one pitch.
With one pitch, yeah, that nasty
Right.
cutter. You can't really argue it at this point, but down the road, it'll be interesting. If he can keep it up, like you said, big dude, a little bit of injury problems already, I put my money on Rivera.
Yeah, and my guy, I already talked about Acuna Jr., but to just talk about somebody else for a minute, I'll go with Mookie Betts, just because I think he's either going to leave, get traded,
The Cubs.
or sign somewhere else.
Straight up for Bryant.
Well, you guys got $300 million payrolls over there?
Maybe.
Oh, we got to keep my boy Castellanos.
They got their own
I don't care.
TV network now, so they're printing money.
So, I mean, I think Mookie, wherever he goes, he's going to be the superstar of that team. He's still young. I think, what is he, like 26, 27?
Yeah.
Somewhere mid to late 20s.
He came up young.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's going to be a superstar no matter where he goes. He's going to sign a huge deal, so he's going to be there for at least a couple years. Nobody ever really plays out those huge contracts, but I think he's definitely a guy that you can invest in now. Maybe when he gets to a new team, he might be a little bit lower since it's a new team.
Could be.
But definitely somebody to keep an eye on.
Definitely.
Well, that's going to do it for us on this episode. I think we covered the list pretty well. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave us a comment, shoot us an email, give us a like, give us a follow.
We love the feedback. We love the interactions. So
Definitely. Love the feedback we've been getting from a couple episodes. We've got some autographs coming up in the works, hopefully some interviews as well with a couple athletes, so keep your eye on that. And then we'll be back with another episode next week. Thanks for tuning in, guys.